you know, it's just interesting to me that there is kind of these two camps on the internet, and one of them is kind of like just filling up pages and pages of forum discussions about who is natty and who isn't. And there's another camp who is like, whenever that comes up, they're just like, why do you even care? Who gives a shit? Like, why do you even care? So I don't know, where do you kind of stand on that?
I think the why do you even care camp is dominated by people who are so tired of the same stupid debates. Um, because they don't lead anywhere, and most of the time they're just examples of people's own personal biases. Like if people wanted this, like there was a point where it just got to this crazy ridiculous thing where people would um, just call out any natural bodybuilder, and then there was like, there are people who would post like, there's no such thing as natural bodybuilding, like it's all just guys who are on a little bit of gear, and to me, like why, like that's, I just don't understand, like the debate got so extreme. There was either your complete conspiracy theorists on one side, or the let's not talk about it at all, this is not an issue, you guys are just haters thing, and it's like, they're this is obviously ridiculous. The idea that basically people are just drinking steroids out of the tap water, and anyone with a decent physique who picks for weight is probably on gear is kind of insane. But not want to talk about it at all. It's primarily a reaction to that, and not a useful one, because I think where the problem that stems out of that is that people who are new to the game don't really understand what is a reasonable physique to try to attain, or they don't know what the truth is. When you have people who are completely uninvolved in natural bodybuilding, and are just looking at physiques and have really no idea, most of the time they're either very young and frustrated with their progress, or potentially there's someone who's been on gear for their whole life and doesn't have any really idea what they could have done without steroids, who are making these comments like, of course, if this guy's as big as me and I've been on gear for 10 years, then he's got to be on gear. Well, it's like, dude, you started when you're 17. Maybe you would have had a decent physique without it, or dude, you only are 17. How the hell would you know what someone could accomplish? And so it's the debate is not very useful in any way, and I don't think people show enough humility. Like if someone is borderline, and you're not sure, and well, or you shouldn't be sure, but someone comes in there and says that person is definitely on gear, I'm going to destroy that person. I'm going to make a video. I'm going to call them out. Like, what if you're wrong? You just destroyed someone's reputation. That's like, the guy who's sitting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Like, that's really not cool. Like, in my mind, it's like, if there is a possibility, if there is a hint of a doubt, like, maybe we should show some humility, because that could be very harmful to someone who might actually be natural. I've seen it many, 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 many times. People who I am 100% convinced that they're natural have been, drugged through the mud, and their reputation has been tarnished based on absolutely nothing factual except some loud person's opinion. And you can't really come back from that, because, like you hit it. Yeah, I heard that rumor that Alberto Nunez is 250 pounds. Like, that exists in all types of things you hear on the internet. Like, I heard that rumor that X guy was not natural. Like, and it might have been completely just based on nothing, or even trolling. And now it's just the stigma the person has because there was some guy who was just convinced, or gal, or whatever. So I think it's a very frustrating debate because of the form it takes. But when it's intelligent, it can be quite interesting. Quite interesting. Like, Casey Butts has done a great job at looking at what is some of the natural muscle potential out there, and I'd like to think I did a nice contribution to that with the article I did at Alan, for the AARR for Alan Aragon, which is he made free. He thought it was important enough. So I think when it's intelligent, it's a very cool topic. So that's why it has so much interest, is because it's relevant to people to know what's reasonable to get to, and a lot of people don't want to use steroids, so the normal people on the cover of the magazines isn't relatable to them. And they also can feel very betrayed when they finally find out that, oh my God, everyone I've been looking up to is on gear. So there's high levels of emotion, high levels of interest, and it produces a very non-productive discussion. So it creates fighting. So it just kind of elevates into volcanoes, but none of it's useful. So I think when it is intelligent, it can be a very cool discussion, and I actually like it. It's just that now that people are willing to call anybody out, or just I guess it's not even people. The internet makes it seem like the loudest voices seem like they're There are more people than they are. It's a small minority of very loud, opinionated people, and it sometimes, to me, it feels like it, because I'm in the natural bodybuilding scene, that it's everyone's hating on us, and that's not even true. It's just a
Yeah,
loud minority.
are you familiar with the site called nettyornot.com?
Yeah, that is a it's almost, I don't even know if it's serious. It's so ridiculous, that
Yeah,
site,
I mean that's just I mean all that does is like, okay, let's take your stats compared to someone who we know use drugs, and if it's even close, then you're in gear, like no question.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
and then make up the stats half the time anyway, and then just make shit up. It's great. No, that website, I've actually always thought it's not real, that it's people just trolling. I'm sure I guarantee you, like, maybe you hear it, like if you go to like the Olympia, like people ask questions like, "Hey, are you natural?" Like 100%, and then everyone laughs like he, you know. Or there are some IFBB pros who will very much openly talk about their drug use, and other guys, like, you know, like if you heard interviews with Jay Cutler, he'll talk about, like, you know, obviously, you know, that bodybuilders have to do certain things, and he'll talk around it without ever admitting it, because um,
Mhm.
I guess he feels like he can't. But yeah, I mean, in the groups of guys who and gals who are openly using anabolic steroids, or it's very clear, and they're all doing it, you know, like at national level. I remember, I shouldn't say names, but I met a very high level NPC competitor trying to get his pro card at a supplement store, and he said, you know, I asked him a few questions, and he stopped me. And he said, just to make sure we're on the same page. Like, I'm an advanced level bodybuilder. I take a lot of anabolic steroids, so just so you know that. And then he kept talking, and I was just like, oh,
Uh,
that's probably the most open I've heard it. Like, I knew that, I assumed, but he stated it just like, you know, just so you know, like, let's not get too caught up on like my opinion on creatine. I want you to know I'm on all the gear, you know, kind of thing. So
yeah.
that is something that is definitely discussed in that community. And if you were to go on, you know, certain message boards and stuff like that, you can see it. But at the same time, in the United States and other countries where it's illegal, they're very guarded about it, because they could be you know, prosecuted. But but yeah, like in the natural bodybuilding community, um, you'd be ostracized immediately. Like if someone came up and it was like, "Hey, Eric, you know, I'm actually on gear," I'd be like, "Whoa, like that's why are you cheating?" You know, like I don't care if Ronnie Coleman's on gear. That's great. They have their level playing field. We try to have our level playing field. So it's yeah, there's not a, as much as some guys think there's not a little secret community of us all harboring this conspiracy that, man, just never come out, like all conspiracies. So
Yeah, and it's people don't realize like how big of a deal it becomes after you reach a certain level of fame and reputation. I mean,
mm,
for example, you know, Lane Norton is well, he's discussed obviously a lot on different forums and whatever message boards and stuff. Um, and I mean, for a guy of his reputation and for what he's done for the community and what a name he is, I mean, and the funny thing is, like, even like whatever is the case, like he has done so much for the community. Like his advice is good. We know he preaches the good word, and but if it turned out about him, I mean, that would be like as big of a deal as Lance Armstrong. Like it would destroy the community, like in some ways, probably. So,
definitely, no, it would be a big blow to the community. And I mean, and also think about it from his standpoint. I mean, this is a guy who, pursuing his PhD, now has it, an active scientist, living in the United States, competing in the IPF worlds and USAPL, you know, being off-season drug tested, being tested in competition, competing in the IFPA, which is polygraph and urine tested. I mean, the lengths he would have to go to evade all that detection, he would invariably eventually get caught if he was on something. People say, you know, Lance Armstrong didn't get, you know, he didn't get caught. Like, yes, he did. That's how we know he's on gear. They had a blood sample from him from years back that they finally tested again, and he got caught. You know, that
yeah,
you people do eventually get caught, and knowing that, the amount of risk. I mean, you could get your you could be banned from the scientific community, the academic community, never be able to compete as a powerlifter, never be able to compete as a bodybuilder, and lose your job. All the clients you train, all the articles you write. I mean, for him to do that, it would be the dumbest, most short-sighted risk ever. And it just wouldn't make any sense. Why would someone risk that? you know? So I think people don't think of it sometimes from that side. Like, I can't even imagine knowing that I'm randomly tested. I could be randomly tested, as an IPF athlete in the off season. And I'm tested in competition. I'm polygraph tested. That failing any of those pretty much is a career ender, and potentially, depending on how much of my identity is wrapped up in me as a bodybuilder, a identity ender. I mean, that would be like, I'd be worried if someone in that level of stature cheated and got caught, about suicide. I really would. So to me, I just can't even see like why someone would do that. Um, now that's different than someone who doesn't compete in anything, isn't an academic, and just has a YouTube channel. They're never going to get caught. It's just what they say on a channel. Like, I'm natural, and then it gets some more clicks and views. Great, unless someone like sneaks into their room at night and like takes a blood sample and can prove it. Like, there's no risk, but there's a huge risk when you're doing that. Like you said, to the community and to the person. So it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why anyone would risk that. Even if you didn't think you were going to get caught, the fear of getting caught would be like just the most stressful thing in the world on a day-to-day basis.
Although I guess if you did it like years and years back, and like then but kind of reap the benefits of it, and now you're natural, I guess you could get away with it. But yeah.
Well, you're not really getting away with it. Like, there's a time drug-free. Like, in natural bodybuilding, you need to be drug-free for, depending on the organization, 5 to 7 years. And there's many, many, many bodybuilders who have, went down a pathway and went, that's not for me. I want to be natural, and here they are. Like, it's very commonly well known that I used over-the-counter pro hormones in 2005, 2006, before I was even considering competing in bodybuilding. Found out what the deal was with natural bodybuilding, had to compete in certain organizations, stopped taking them, and then had to wait, years before I compete in the INBF and things like that. And I love the idea that there's that somehow the steroids you took years ago are giving this massive benefit. And they'll cite these studies on like changes in satellite cells and things like that. But there's never been a study that's looked at how big people are who once took steroids but have been training for 15 years and then did. So it's a huge leap, to assume that what you're able to maintain with drugs is giving you a competitive advantage now. Is there a difference at the muscle cell level? Yeah. But does that mean that it actually translates into being able to lift heavier weights in competition or maintain, higher lean body mass than you would normally? You could speculate, but having seen many, 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 many bodybuilders who used to be on something and now 7-10 years later they're not. They don't maintain the size. They may have gotten to their natural potential a little faster or something like that, and yeah, that could be seen as a competitive advantage. But but in the end, I think that is, and it's not like people plan to do that. Like, I'm going to use gear from 2002 to 2005, and then I'm going to wait till 2012 to compete. That's kind of, I don't think people think like that.